All right, we are live. Welcome to the Pod Couples Election 2016 coverage with your hosts, Kyle Griffin and
A guy who swallowed a ball full of fire ants, Steve Hubbs.
Is that about what your stomach is feeling like right now?
Man. It is not. It's not going great inside this body.
Well,
not that it ever is.
But
this time there's a reason.
This time it's not something that you did to yourself.
Correct.
It's
something the country is doing to me.
At least about 44% of the country anyway.
Yeah.
Is responsible for. Well, that was really going to be my first question. Like, on a scale of 1 to 10, how nervous are you right now?
11, easily. Easily, man. I just can't take anything for granted. It's like the idea, like the risk reward here. The risk is so devastating that there's like no way any kind of logic or analytics, anything that I have in front of me that would be telling me like, don't worry, everything's gonna be fine. Like, I can't listen to any of that. That's not how that's not how terror operates, like, in my mind. So I assume you're a little bit more of a voice of reason at this point, but
yeah, I mean, obviously, look, it's like there's no way you cannot be terrified with the prospect of a Donald Trump presidency, however remote, right? Like, if I was to pull out right now a very, I don't know if they make guns like this, but if I were to pull out a gun which had a barrel in it and there were 100 chambers in that barrel, I put one bullet in, so we have 99 empty chambers, and one bullet, spun it around, gave it to you, made you play Russian roulette with it. Would you feel good about pulling that trigger? I mean, you know your odds are very small. You're going to catch that one bullet, but you're still going to feel bad. Donald Trump has a better than 1% chance of winning this election. So there's no way you're going to feel comfortable. Even with the odds, even though Hillary is the favorite, and so far from what we've seen tonight, there's nothing that's come in yet to dissuade us from that notion. However, obviously very early, there's really nothing has been decided. I mean, all the states that have been called so far are states that were locked, states that were not going to be in play.
And even knowing that, it's just difficult to still see it happen. Like, obviously, I expected Kentucky to go for Trump. I don't think anyone wouldn't. But the actual visceral reaction that occurs when you see it, you're just like, oh, no, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's no way you can feel good about any state in this country. Donald Trump. It makes you somewhat embarrassed to be part of this union, to know that there are states out there that are overwhelmingly supportive of Donald Trump. You know, given the choice. And again, this is not a Republican Democrat thing. Like, I didn't feel embarrassed that those states voted for Mitt Romney.
Right.
I didn't feel embarrassed those states voted for John McCain. You know, I felt somewhat embarrassed those states voted for George W. Bush in 2004, but still nothing on the level of this. I mean, like, as bad as Bush was, he looked like a genius statesman standing next to Trump, and that is that's really the bottom line here. Is that this guy? He's a piece of garbage. He's a flaming piece of garbage. He is not. He has. When it comes down to it, of course, we've been beating this drum for a year at this point, but he is, a guy who has no knowledge about even the basics of government, of the policy, of the Constitution, of world affairs. I mean, not even the most cursory surface level knowledge that you would need to have a coherent conversation with your neighbor at a bar, much less to be the president of the United States. I mean, it is just unbelievable that he could get this far, that the system is so broken, is so flawed, and it has this kind of loophole that allows someone like this to get to the position where he's within striking distance of being the most powerful person on the planet. I mean, anyway, like I said, we've probably beaten that to death, but it never ceases to boggle the mind.
Podcast. Still at it.
So let's talk about the states, right? So I mean, at the end of the day, it's all like the states and the electoral votes, of course, are going to decide who's going to walk away president after tonight. And so, and as we've talked about, many of them
who's going to walk away, who's going to get thrown into a van.
Many of them have been called already. Like I said, these are all states that are basically irrelevant. So let's talk about the ones that are not irrelevant. I've got them broken down into tiers. Now, if you're listening to this live feed, you can actually see this whole breakdown on the description of the live feed. You know, so just where you're you know, the box, so to speak, which of course is just a black screen at this point with you know, with audio coming out of it. But
right, it's just going to be that too.
Yeah,
nothing fancy's happening.
Yeah, you're never going to see us. You know, we're holding
that's
that back.
Gift. That's a gift to you.
We're holding that back for a special time. But what you can see there, down below there in the description, is the state-by-state breakdown. And I've got them broken down into 4 tiers here. The first tier is what I call the panic button states. These are all states that Clinton should win, but Trump has an outside shot. In some cases, it's a very outside shot, but still, you know, it's possible. If Trump wins any of these, especially Pennsylvania or Michigan, then we really need to start panicking. So that's when that ball of ants can really start going to work.
Oh, good.
On the old stomach lining if you see any of these fall. Pennsylvania, Michigan, Virginia, Wisconsin, Colorado. Those are the 5 to watch out for there. After that, we have what I call the finisher states. These are the ones that if Clinton does win all the above states, as she should, then either of these 2 will put her over the top and give her the win, give her the presidency. So those 2 states now are Nevada and New Hampshire. So either one of those combined with the ones above and then all the ones that are already locks, it's over. Then we have what I call the game changer states. These are the states that if Clinton wins either of these, it's over. Like Donald Trump has no viable path without these, unless some really crazy things are happening with some kind of huge upsets. You know, in the
crazy things
in this
states. Election.
I know. Like I said, you don't want to write anything off, but just, you know, like I said, it would have to be really unpredictably just bizarre for something to happen that would cause Hillary to lose if she wins either of these. So these should seal the deal. But she doesn't need them. So that's why these are again, she can lose both of these and still pull it out with the scenario above. Anyway, those 2 states, of course, are Florida and North Carolina. So
of course.
So anyway, then finally I have it what I call the gravy states. These are all states that ultimately I expect Trump is going to win. But Clinton is at least somewhat competitive in all of these states. And so if she's winning these states, like we're just talking about how big is the landslide, essentially. Those states, of course, are Ohio, Iowa, Arizona, Georgia, and then the last one I had on that list, South Carolina. That is the one of the state on this whole list so far, which actually has been called for Trump. Again, that was going to be the longest of long shots for Clinton anyway, so not a big deal. Although polls had shown her, you know, at least somewhat competitive in South Carolina. Although I never really believed she was going to win it. So that's where we're at. So like I said, we're really looking at these states on this list, and as those calls come in, we'll really start seeing the race shape up. So, let's talk about this, Steve. So since we last were on the air, we may have jinxed things a bit. I'm not going to blame it on us per se.
Yeah, but we do have we hold a lot of sway, man. A lot of influence.
A lot of sway in the universe. I think that's been well established. But you know, we first really trying to the very next day after we recorded that podcast, the James Comey letter came out. And of course, we have not had another podcast since then. So this is the first time we've had a chance
to speak a big deal
to our illustrious audience. Yeah, I don't know if you've been following the news. I don't know if you, but anyway, obviously this stuff has been pretty well dissected. Do you have any particular take you would like to share with us? You and I haven't even talked about this offline because you've been busy with all your various sundry businesses. So
Yeah, been real productive. It's just like one more crazy spectacle in this election cycle and one more super unorthodox thing. So, like, you have this sort of Trumplandia effect, this news coming out of New York, this news that, Giuliani was sitting on this information ahead of time, and what they're calling a November surprise. And it shouldn't be a surprise. Like, it seems bizarre, but we are again, like, in this crazy position where, I mean, it's, to me, what's really surprising about it is the fact that Comey's got 7 years to go in the job, and I don't know what he's doing. If he's trying to make a statement, this is like a power move on his play. But it's definitely, obviously, as soon as you get comfortable with the Clinton lead, we talk about it, we start to feel that we can relax a little bit. Then, of course, something like this comes out. I was actually honestly surprised that we hadn't heard anything today. I thought maybe there's going to be like 12 million emails that we heretofore, had no knowledge of that they were going to start talking about. Like, and I can't imagine that moving forward, there still won't be more coming out of it. That I don't know what it says about the relationship, whomever becomes president, how that's going to play with the FBI, but to see them jump in and be this kind of politically active, which they have a history of not doing for good reason, it's going to be, it's going to be, whoever wins, it's going to be a gridlocked and contentious state of American politics.
Well, did you hear about how the essentially one of Comey's driving forces, this is some of the reports have said, was that there is a pro-Trump faction within the FBI, somewhat substantial one, that was going to leak the information, and so that was his way of getting out in front of it. And of course, then that same they were also ones who leaked the idea that the indictment was imminent for the Clinton Foundation stuff, also, which turned out to be complete bullshit. And this is.
But it did a lot of damage. That's the thing,
right? And it's interesting, and that's obviously what they're trying to do. Donald Trump said there is a global conspiracy trying to rig our election, and like we really gave him a lot of shit. But you know what? I think we have to admit, of all the things Donald Trump said, he was wrong about almost everything. He was right about the one thing he was right about. There is a global conspiracy trying to rig our election. Vladimir Putin, Julian Assange, and the FBI are working together to rig the election for Donald Trump. So good job on that one, Donald. I'm glad you were finally right.
He's got the best conspiracy theories.
So, all right. So, this is the pod couple, of course, but, we like to bring on guests from time to time. I know we've gotten a lot of feedback. You guys always enjoy when we have a different voice in the mix. And, we have a returning champion here, Noah G, who is with us tonight. And he's been watching the returns very closely here. So I want to bring him on now, and he can talk about what he's seeing, what he's looking at, thoughts, feelings, et cetera, et cetera. Noah, welcome to the program.
Great to have you back, sir.
Good to be back.
Now, so what, since we've been on the air here last 10 minutes or so, have you seen anything new come across the wire of interest?
Well, the last thing I saw, it said that the betting markets are starting to favor a Trump win in Florida. So definitely a little bit of a concern there. He's up by a little over 100,000 votes, 92% reported. That was according to what I just saw on TV. So I don't know if she'll be able to make that up. And basically, it seems like almost all the key swing states are neck and neck. So I think the race is closer than what I was expecting and what the polls were showing.
Well, that was not the dose of sober reassurance that we were needing here. But how's the ball of ants doing?
Still terrified, obviously.
What?
Apparently, we're also having some choppy mic issues, according to a text I just received. So,
Yeah, I mean, I think that there may be some issues. I don't know how much this is the mic versus just the internet connection in general. I think there is a tremendous amount of traffic on the internet right now, which a lot of sites are being hit pretty hard. So I don't know if there's anything we can do about that. But again, I doubt it's the mic. We did test this at the time. The mic was working fine prior, so it could just be again some internet bandwidth type stuff that is out of our control. But anyway, we will hopefully it's not so bad that it's unbearable to listen to. And if so, I suppose you can always shut it off and listen to something else. But the plenty of election coverage out there. Of course, we're glad you're with us and hope you stay with us if it's not too painful. I'm still hopeful that with Florida, when the last that kind of saw it, we still had a lot of votes to come in out of Miami-Dade, which Clinton was winning by 30 points, which is more than Obama won it by in 2012. That is the most populous county in the state. So a lot of those votes are still to come in. That could certainly give her the edge that she needs to put her over the top. But obviously, at this point, I think it's pretty clear Florida is going to be a nail biter. But I don't think that anyone ever thought otherwise, right? We knew it was going to come down to the wire, one way or another. So
still, in your heart, did you think it was going to come down to Clinton in Florida, though? Like going into this,
did I think Clinton was going to win Florida? Yeah. Yes, and I still do. I think it's definitely too early to panic.
It's never too early to panic.
See, I felt like going in, I thought Trump was maybe going to win Florida by like 1 or 2%. So that's why I'm trying not to panic. Like it looks like it may trend that way. We just don't know how many more votes are coming out of each county to know which way those last votes are going to go. But if he does win it in that way, I guess for me, I would still think that that's right in line with what I expected, which if everything else is right in line with what I expected, Clinton would be fine. So definitely a little worrisome just because I was hoping for Florida, just to kind of put it away early, but not so lucky.
Yeah, like at this point, not a tremendous amount of news. The polls, I think, are closed in most places now, so we should definitely start getting a lot of results pouring in, and hopefully we'll have more substantial things to discuss and not just speculation. But I think when you look back at this race and you think what could Donald Trump have done worse than he did? It's really hard to imagine someone running a worse race than Donald Trump did in many ways.
I mean, he could have been a woman. That probably would have blown it for him.
So I mean, this is the thing that is frightening. Like whatever happens here is, can someone run such a sloppy, undisciplined, just offensive campaign with fundraising troubles, definitely had a dollar deficit, in terms of campaign funds, huge get out the vote operation deficit, apparently was very, had very limited data operation, all these disadvantages, and going against, most of his own making, and yet still to be this close. Like, what does that say about our system and
that people love tweets?
And somehow the pod couple Twitter feed is not catching on.
Just wait, 2017, that's our year. fiery hellscape, whatever's left of America, 2017. That's when the Twitter audience is going to skyrocket.
Yeah, I think to your point, it makes me wonder, like, so let's say it comes down to basically a toss-up if it's really that close. So that tells you either one of two things, that basically all those things that were thought to be super important are pretty much worthless, or Trump was going to win by even more had Hillary's camp not done all those things, which that's, it's a little bit frustrating just to see somebody who is completely unqualified and say and do whatever they want, and they get put in a position where they can still win. And it really makes you wonder what it is that people saw that they wanted to actually come out and vote in the millions.
Well, is the yearning for, I think, a lot of the support behind Trump is like this idea of an outsider. And like I've heard time and time again, like, he's not a politician, which is why I want to vote for him. And so could it have been anybody? Like, as long as they weren't a politician, could it have been anyone grossly unqualified, so long as they had some name recognition? If like the slap chop guy, Vince or whatever, the guy that beat up those hookers, like if he would have run like on the basis of his platform being that he wasn't a politician and that he was an outsider, would he have generated that much support? And maybe.
I don't know, man. Like I don't see how. I mean, I guess I just keep going back to the same thing. It's like, was it really something about Donald Trump that was special that people that resonated with people, or is it just the fact that he, was somebody else, like you're saying, and I think a lot of people could have won, based on what we're seeing now. I mean, I guess it's just hard for me to say because of the way that I view Donald Trump. I feel like if he could potentially win or even make it close, then I would ask, like, who couldn't do that?
Yeah. No, you're right.
So, some negative signs for Democrats. Trump is overperforming his polls by several percentage points in Florida. Also, New Hampshire and Pennsylvania Senate races are leaning Republican at the moment. Now, that doesn't mean that the presidential race will also follow suit, but in general, how
many people do you know that split tickets?
Well, yeah, there's obviously that, which is an issue, and then issue that it's just a general sign of Republican strength, Republican turnout. That they definitely if they're overperforming their polls in general. So not good signs at this stage of the game. But again, it's still early.
Another not good sign, there's apparently no whiskey in this house.
So yeah, all these forecasts are volatile right now. I mean, everything that we're looking at is going to bounce around until some more things are decided. So it's like, yeah, again, not to we're going to get some pieces of bad news as the night goes on, but we're not, all is not lost, so we're still a long way from that point. Anyway. A lot of dead air.
Yeah.
Do we have another guest? No, we don't have another guest. Okay, I guess I got bad news from or misinformation from the green room here. So we we are we are looking at some different data. Do you have anything new that you're seeing, Noah?
Not anything new at the moment. I think it's just waiting for more of Florida to report in because they got to about 91%. It seems like about an hour ago, and now they have 93% reporting. So there's still 7% left, and Hillary's margin looks a little too big to make up. But you know, I guess it all just depends on the counties that they're still waiting on and the population in those counties. So that's kind of what I'm still watching.
You said Hillary's margin, like as in she's losing.
Yes.
And that looks too big. Okay.
Yeah, so it looks like she's still down by maybe 2%. You know, like quite a few votes, and then Hillary had jumped out to an early lead in Ohio, and now she's trailing by about 7% in Ohio, with I think about 40% reporting. So I haven't really seen anything good come across in the last 30 minutes or so.
Nothing positive on the old Twitter line there.
No, they said Clinton isn't doing as well with women in Florida as she is in other states. So potentially you can look at that two ways, you know, maybe bad news that you lose Florida, but also might be good news if Florida is not really an indicator of how the rest of the night's going to go. So I would say maybe good news. I guess North Carolina is going to be scary. Michigan. I don't know. I mean, if he wins Florida and Ohio, then that's when we're looking at North Carolina, Michigan, Iowa, possibly even Arizona, and that doesn't even count Nevada, that we're still waiting to see if John Ralston's prediction was right, that Nevada was over before tonight even started. So
explain to me how, Kyle, the prognosticators can get it so wrong. If you look at something like Nate Silver or 538, any of these sort of polls, all the odds makers saying, Clinton has such a high chance of winning the election. What differs? What happens today that accounts for, this wildly inaccurate initial? Is it just that guessing is always guessing at its heart?
Well, I mean, sure. I mean, there's obviously things can happen, with that are going to, people are going to overperform or underperform their polls. I mean, that happens, in every election. I think, if you look at overall, nothing that we're seeing here so far is really outside, certainly not outside of the realm of what was possible with the polling numbers.
Yeah, but if that's true, explain why I've wet myself.
Well, like I said, it's the Russian roulette thing, even if there's one bullet in that gun, and there's definitely more than one in that gun, and with 100 chambers, you're going to be very nervous pulling that trigger, and so I think, like I said, right now, I mean, really, it's Florida and North Carolina are what are swinging the race in Donald Trump's direction. If he can hold on to both of those, it was always going to be, and of course, Ohio, which we expected to go to Trump, even though Clinton's competitive there. If he wins all three of those, then it's going to be a nail biter. I mean, there's no other way around it. The thing that flips it from being a nail biter to Clinton having a substantial lead is really Florida, and to a lesser extent North Carolina. So that hasn't changed, and we knew those Florida and North Carolina were two of the closest states in the country. So the nation actually was small polling leads there pretty consistently, for quite a long time, which is one of the reasons why I thought she ultimately would win both those states. And it's still, still possible. But, obviously at the moment, she's down in both, which is less good.
It is less good. So what, for reference to the people at home, what are we looking at right now on our computer screen in case they want to play along?
The New York Times forecast.
Great. The failing New York Times.
So, yeah. Well, Donald Trump has to be pretty happy with it right now. It's currently got Clinton because he clearly got the race at a total coin flip, giving Clinton a 50% chance of winning, which obviously means also 50% chance of losing. But it's again, this is still early enough that there's a lot of chance for volatility here. We can't they have a little disclaimer right at the top saying that these numbers are volatile and they'll become more trustworthy as the votes are counted. So again.
So with the situation being kind of a toss-up that it is now, that it's looking like, how deep into the night can we expect this to take us? How much longer do I have to put up with this, Kyle?
I would say at this point we're probably looking at least a couple more hours. So it's like I said, Trump is really. You can look. They show the margin by which he's overperforming the polls, and it is significant in Florida, North Carolina, and Michigan. So
how do you explain that? The polls getting it so wrong. Is that just people that?
Well, it's not with that. It's not outside the margin of error.
Mm-hmm.
It's still well within the margin of error. So that's that's the nature of polling. You're always going to have a margin of error, and unfortunately, I felt that if anything, that they'd be more likely to err on the side of Clinton than of Trump, but as of yet, that doesn't seem to be the case. So
Trump's done a great job of just whipping people up into a frenzy.
The early evidence says yes.
Exciting his base.
Yeah. This may have been a mistake to do this podcast. It is a little hard to focus on it with all the let's see if these numbers are changing at all.
No. Yes. No. I don't know.
No, it doesn't look like anything has changed as of yet.
Everything I'm reading, they're just showing that Michigan is now getting close to being a toss-up. And obviously, if Clinton loses Michigan, that's going to be a really, really bad sign for how the night's going to go. So I guess I'm reading on 538 live blog right now. If anyone wants to check that out. They have they're basically working off of the New York Times live forecast, which I know you're also looking at. It says that the New York Times is now giving Clinton just a 54% chance of winning Michigan and a 58% chance of winning the election. And it says before the night started, they had Clinton at 94% chance to win Michigan and a 79% chance to win the election.
I hate math. Anybody else? Well, obviously all Trump supporters listening.
So it's getting a little scary.
Well, it looks like Kyle has quit podcasting forever. So Noah and I will have to carry this forward. I'm not a man of great mental resolve myself. I imagine I will start bleeding from my eyes at any given moment, leaving Noah to do the rest of the heavy lifting throughout the evening. But thanks for tuning in. Choppy mics notwithstanding. Good to know you're all out there taking part in the process. And it looks like we may have another special guest coming on down to Pound Town. Is it Pound Town? I don't know. Anyway, our good friend, champion of the show, resolute non-listener of the program, even though he has been a guest before. It's Dr. Rick. Good to have you here, buddy.
Good to be here. I wonder if I'm the only one to have more appearances on the show than listens.
So we're staring here at this New York Times forecast. They've got Trump actually as the favorite now to win the presidency. Are you seeing anything from the stuff you're looking at that you can sort of reassure us that this is unlikely, or that this is just a temporary blip?
Well, it looks like 53% is I would say a toss-up. But what I'm looking at still is the map, the serpentine like Candyland map is on 538. So that map looks something like this, and let's see how this translates on audio. But basically, it may come down to New Hampshire, and Pennsylvania, and Nevada. So let's go ahead and grant that Trump wins Ohio, Florida, North Carolina, and just because it's leaning maybe that way right now, all those cases. And let's go ahead and grant that Clinton wins Michigan and Colorado. Pennsylvania, New Hampshire, Nevada. If anyone won, any two of those, then they would be the president. So that's kind of where we are. And right now, it's looking like New Hampshire might be the swing state.
So Michigan is currently at 18% of votes in. Have you seen or heard anything that would indicate that Clinton has a very, very narrow edge right now? Anything that would indicate that they're not, a lot of the places like in and around Detroit are not reporting in yet, or anything that would kind of.
Well, yeah, I mean, typically, right, you have these cities, you have these long lines because they make, basically make the black people wait in long lines, and I mean, that's just how it works, right? And so you end up with that vote coming in last, and because they're not going to count all the votes till they've all been cast, or places with lots of students, for example. So that's basically usually a good sign. On the other hand, I was thinking about what does that say about 2000? In 2000, Florida was called for Gore, and then it's back to Bush sort of late, which would suggest maybe there's some other dynamics in play that can cause a late swing to the Republicans. So I'm not exactly sure how that works. One thing I did see that was about Michigan that's a little disturbing was they said in 2008 and 12, rural voters account for only 19% of the vote, but according to preliminary exit poll results, they account for 27% of the state's vote, and Trump wins rural voters by 15 points. So if that were the case, Michigan could be a little dangerous. But if we're talking about Michigan at this point, as something, if he wins Michigan, I think it's probably it's looking pretty bad. Unless Colorado and Nevada can hold, and I'm not even sure what the numbers look like in that scenario. But for example, Michigan to Trump, Colorado, Nevada, New Hampshire to Clinton. I'm not sure what that looks like if we crunch that, but yeah, it's definitely bad. Stock market's tanking apparently. And, at least that.
I know how that stock market feels.
Actually, you should look at the. I don't know if it's. This is of course not the American stock market because that's closed, but international markets. Apparently, on foreign exchange, the peso-dollar exchange rate is also a good omen to look at because if people are looking to buy pesos, they probably think Clinton's going to win. If they're looking to sell pesos, they probably think Trump is going to win. It was up early in the day, but that was back when everyone was looking at Castro and didn't really know anything. So, yeah, I'm definitely concerned right now.
Votecaster did not turn out to be very accurate.
Votecaster turned out to be a pile of shit. So fuck Votecaster.
Votecaster very controversially was reporting basically what they call turnout results based on some exit polling, some pre-polling, some of the I think they were also looking at some kind of like micro targeting. So I don't know how their whole formula worked, but it was very controversial for them to be reporting some kind of results like as the race was still going on, and but they did it as an experiment. They went forward. They broke the usual tradition of news organizations or whatever choosing not to release any results until the polls are closed. So far, the broadcast basically had Hillary up in just about every swing state they were tracking, and it's up by significant margins in places like Florida. Again, that unless something very changes quite a bit here, that seems to have been off tremendously. So
looks like Virginia looks to be closer than we thought. Trump leading by 1 percentage point with 82% in. Of course, still lots of outstanding votes for Clinton there, but that's something that's concerning. Michigan, I'm concerned about Michigan. I saw this report. This is probably almost a not to be taken seriously, but claims that that Michigan is Clinton is only leading by 1 percentage point in Wayne County, and Obama won by 48 percentage points. That sounds a little wrong, but that's at least what the early numbers are showing. So that's probably it's kind of strange. Right now, I mean, when you look at numbers like that, it's like if your team loses the first game of the basketball season, you it's not reason to worry quite yet. They still may be a champion, but they may not be quite as good as you thought they were, and I think that's kind of where things are right now. So apparently, betting markets now have the election as even money, as you said. The New York Times tool does as well. Interestingly, when Bush won the Electoral College and Gore won the popular vote, what did Gore win by? Half a percentage point? Wasn't much.
yeah,
and Clinton is going to win by like 2 to 3, which would be, probably the greatest divergence, certainly in modern times, between the Electoral College and the popular vote, if not of all time. Something that we hopefully won't have to contemplate.
Yeah, I'm not sure at all at our times upshot forecast. It's they've got the Democrats, they've got or Clinton specifically 59% chance of winning. Oh, they just now flipped Michigan into Trump's column. 53% chance of winning. They give to him. Pennsylvania's down to 59. Wisconsin's at 65. Again, this is their numbers, but they've got him with a over 95% chance of holding Florida at this point, according to their numbers. 74 North Carolina. I mean, if these numbers hold, like it's not even going to be close, which is hard to believe at this point, but on
top of everything else, you're going to owe Travis $20.
That will be the least of my problems.
He's listening to the stream.
So
Hey, Travis.
a bet with Travis.
I made a bet.
Was it a partisan bet with Travis?
Here's the crazy thing about that, and I guess Travis is listening to it, but like when we made it, this was way back when like there were like 14 people still in the Republican race, and he said like oh, I know Trump's going to be president, and I just kind of laughed about it and said like that's ridiculous, it's never going to happen, and he's not even going to be the nominee, and he said like I'll bet you $20 he's president. I'm like $20 that he's like, president or the nominee, like, and he's like, no, the president. Like, so I'm like, okay, so like even if he gets knocked out in the primary process, and we $20, and he's like, yeah, and I go, he has to go all the way and actually win the whole general election. He's like, yeah. I said, okay, well, what kind of odds do you want? I was thinking like maybe I would, if he won 5-1 or 10-1 or something. He said even money. So even money, $20 bet with Trump winning the whole thing way back early in the primary season. Of course, I took that bet as is, and it's I can't believe that it's even remotely within the possible that I could lose that bet. And again, according to the 9% chance that I will be losing that bet, so I don't understand what's happening.
So I mean, so Travis and Scott Adams basically at that stage.
Yeah, Scott
at the
Adams.
time
Adams called it out. Really. Yeah, fuck you, Nate Silver. Eat a dick.
Scott Adams apparently is has an unbelievable foresight. I was reading Scott Adams from back in the primary. He was saying Trump's going to win the landslide. Trump's going to the landslide. I mean, I don't know if this is going to be a landslide, but even if he wins,
Yeah.
Trump winning is a lot closer to Trump in a landslide than it is to what anyone else thought would happen.
And for everyone listening, what was Adams' primary? What evidence was he using?
Adams was basically saying Trump. The terms he kept using was Trump is a master persuader, and what he meant by that is policy doesn't matter. Most of the other personality traits of the candidates don't matter. Ideology doesn't really matter. What
Intelligence
matters,
doesn't matter.
Intelligence doesn't matter. No, what matters,
Size doesn't matter.
What matters, according to Scott Adams, was that Trump simply brought people's attention to a place where he could persuade them to vote for him, and that's basically what he did. And that's certainly he's outperforming expectations now. I believe yesterday Sam Wang, who does the Princeton Electoral Survey, said he would eat a bug if Clinton didn't get at least 290 electoral votes. So he may be. That's seeming increasingly likely he's eating that bug. But other places as recently as even in the middle of the email scandal, we're saying Clinton 90+%. So clearly those people lacked some insight into people's voting patterns. Trump down to 55% now. That's maybe a point of light. Oh, up to 58%. I'm quickly trying to, rationalize how Trump presidency will be okay. Are you guys doing the same thing?
Oh, yeah.
I'm just trying to think of all the ways.
I'm just thinking about how Kyle's just announced that he's bringing another kid into the world soon.
Yeah.
Whew.
Yeah. Bad timing.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Did
you think about that before you, made the decision?
So yeah, that was actually gonna be a very nice question. Is going to be like. I didn't want to even bring it up because I, am loath to even imagine such a thing. But I suppose at this point in the night, we're forced to at least, entertain the possibility. Like, what does a Trump presidency look like, and what's the best case scenario, right? Because obviously the worst case scenario is nuclear apocalypse, human extinction.
Okay, the best case scenario is, and this is. So the one thing about Scott Adams is he definitely, at times, towed the line between I'm very impressed by Trump's persuasion skills and, hey, Trump really wouldn't be that bad. And eventually it just became just total Trump partisanship, which I actually see through the lens of when he was defending Trump's skills at getting voters and without sort of condemning the people voting for him, he got a lot of attacks, maybe understandably, from people who thought he was a Trump partisan. Most of those people were obviously Clinton partisans, and I think that made him more partisan than he was to begin with. But let me make his case. I think he makes, the best case that can be made, which is that Trump is the kind of person who would pick people, wouldn't micromanage, would pick people for the job who had some idea what they're doing. They might not agree with you or ideologically, but they wouldn't be, completely clueless. Suggestions from the sort of economic policy team has put together and things like that aren't really hopeful in that regard. But that's in the politics stage. That's not in the policy stage. So we can imagine someone like Ronald Reagan, who also really didn't know that much about federal policy, about foreign policy. So just put together a team of respected people and things work out. It's fine. So. I guess that would be the bright side, and maybe some swamps get drained after all. Who knows? But that's essentially what we have to contemplate at the moment.
Do you? The one thing that this will certainly be if nothing else, if Trump does, manage to hang on and win this thing, is the greatest test of American democracy that we've ever had. So, I guess we'll see. We will definitely see how robust, how sturdy American democracy is if this man becomes president. Because there's like, are the institutions, are the norms, are the checks and balances, are they strong enough to basically keep someone like Trump in check, a proto-fascist in check? Or, will we see those crumble just like we saw so many other democratic norms crumble in this election?
That's a good question. Eliezer Yudkowsky made the point this morning that we always think that there's a line of people who stop things happening, and we learned is there mostly isn't. We learned that through the campaign season. We also have learned that in other countries where people have risen to power, and there was some assumption that there would be some administrative bureaucracy who would keep them in check, and they didn't. So the one difference is whatever happens, the mandate of the winner will be fairly weak, in the sense that 50% or even the majority of the voters will have voted against them. And so if you compare to say, Hugo Chavez winning or Hitler winning for that matter, I think those people had more robust popular majorities. Not to mention the fact that the entire sort of insider get things done would not necessarily be working on their side. We have to hope that American democracy and the American government is more robust than some places in the past and other countries in the present.
Bizarrely enough, looking at the current percentage of these states, percentages the New York Times has with these states, Arizona is actually, if Michigan doesn't flip back into Clinton's column, Arizona is the next most likely state for her to win. Obviously, it's not a good place to be. I think they're basing this on the fact that there's no actual votes being reported yet in Arizona. So this is probably their pre-election estimate, pre-results estimate. Obviously, the results have been coming in, have been favoring Trump. He's overperforming his polls. So, presuming that trend line holds, then it seems that Arizona will likely fall very heavily in favor of Trump. So I doubt that this 56% number means anything at this point. But it would be awfully bizarre if Arizona somehow was the saving grace for Clinton in this.
This looks like it's coming down to Michigan, honestly. It's
yeah. Oh yeah. That's the more likely one, obviously. But I'm just saying, if he was able to get Michigan and she could somehow pick off Arizona, it would change it. Although again, that if he wins Michigan, the odds that he doesn't also win Arizona seem to be low.
Actually, another thing that I read this morning is, and if you take away everything about Trump's ideology or his attitudes towards specific groups of people, what it really comes down to, right, is that people who voted for Trump wanted to upturn the table, right? They didn't like the configuration that was on the table, and by overturning the table, they hope to get something better configuration. I think a lot of people even know that Trump is not a small move from what they're used to, and I think there's some sort of American optimism that says that things are going to be better. Things should be better. They deserve to be better. And so anyone who feels that things aren't as good as they want them to be feels like any random move from that position is likely to put them in a better spot. So in other words, most possible states in which America could be in are good. And so if you find yourself in one that's not so good, then selecting a random crazy person is likely to be an improvement. And I think most Clinton voters would disagree with that. but the only thing you can hope for is that that thesis is right. That things could be a lot better if only we were to make a sort of a very random, herky-jerky move away from the status quo.
One of the many conspiracy theories on the right with the Trump, the Trump backers, is that if Trump does win, that basically Obama will declare martial law and just like keep the presidency and refuse to give it up to Trump. What are the chances of that? That's funny. Like,
well, so sounds like
is it possible that they could be right?
Are you saying there's a chance? Basically, what you're. I think that's unlikely. I just don't think that's in Obama's character.
Came back to take the lead in Virginia at the last minute, so she'll most likely pull that out.
Yeah, it looks like Clinton is looking stronger in Virginia, but which is the state she absolutely needed at this point. I don't like the martial law scenario. Can you imagine a transition period between election day and inauguration period, which is essentially like get every single person in government, every sort of permanent member of the civil service, military personnel, so the people who get things done on a day-to-day basis, get them on board with what their basic responsibilities are and what the Constitution says and so forth, and to help mitigate, the possible dangers of a Trump presidency.
Well, yeah, I cannot believe that Michigan is the one that's potentially going to tip this election to Trump. I mean,
what it looks like to me, right? It currently says 55% chance that he goes to Michigan. It also says his 59% chance of winning. That sounds to me like it comes down to Michigan, and there's a few other little hitches, maybe where Arizona swings or something, but really, that's the race to watch right now.
It's like I said, I assume that it's like I wish I knew a little bit more about how they're doing these forecasting with these numbers. I mean, I imagine it's pretty sophisticated. I imagine they are looking at the counties. They are looking at, how many are reporting and in what percentages, and knowing like kind of how many more votes are out there. I just, I like to hope that there's some mistake in the math that like, again, that they're like, oh, whoops, we forgot to count Detroit or something, but it seems that seems unlikely. And so,
is it possible that all this was just obvious in retrospect? I mean, look at Brexit, right? That was something where the betting markets and the polls missed by several percentage points. Have been other similar referendums in other countries. There was recently a peace deal brokered after long and arduous negotiations of decades-long negotiations in Colombia between the rebels and the government. That was put to a referendum. It was thought that was going to pass widely, ended up being defeated. And basically, the common thread in all these stories has been that populism was undersampled in the polls or in common opinion. So maybe if we had just simply made this exact same adjustment of say 3 or 4%, that was the case in all of those, we would have seen this very close race coming. Strangely enough, Clinton's lead in the popular vote is not that much less than we thought. It's maybe within 2% of what was, but I guess that 2% turns out to just very favorably allocated for Trump.
The New York Times forecast now has a 61% is giving a 61% chance of a Trump presidency. I'm not sure where the additional certainty is coming from. Their Michigan call hasn't changed. Arizona has not reported anything yet. I'm not sure. I'm seeing, again, I don't know exactly how they're determining this number, but I'm sure it's all automatically calculated. But I don't see any.
There's a sharp change in the price of the peso over the last hour, which is exactly what you'd expect from investors incorporating the information. I'm going to leave you guys for the next few minutes. Let you guys take on another guest, and maybe I'll be back later in the evening.
All right.
Thanks for your time, Dr. Rick. Nice knowing you.
Well, a lot of just sort of stunned exasperation over here in Studio G. I don't know what else to say. I mean, we're getting dangerously close to where the presidency is moving out of toss-up and just leaning to Trump. I mean, this is just an absolute embarrassment. I mean, it's an embarrassment as an American, you know. It should be.
I'll tell you who it makes me feel good for. I keep thinking about all my friends and relatives that have died, and I'm like, good that they weren't alive to see this, you know. Like my grandma passed away a couple of weeks ago in her sleep peacefully, and like if she hadn't, this certainly would have killed her. So
Yeah.
that's cold comfort.
I suppose you got to take something from it. I mean, again, it's you know, I don't want to give up hope just yet, but even if Clinton pulls this thing out of the fire, I mean, still, what an embarrassment. I mean, for it to be so close, for, you know, her to have to come from behind and again and pull out a last minute win, if that's even what happens, which, you know, let's hope that somehow it still happens. But yeah, Michigan's now ticked up another point, 56% chance of Republican winning, according to this. Overall, 63% Trump in the forecast now, according to the old New York Times, which I would hope is wrong, but I'm not seeing anything out there to contradict it. It seems like everyone, all the other sources are more or less agreeing at this point in time.
Well, it looks like we have another special guest coming to say hi.
Hello.
This is Casey, longtime pod couple listener. First time, obviously your inaugural visit.
Yep.
Pretty good night.
Yeah, what an exciting time to be here.
Get right up there, baby. So you are out watching, you know, everything on the television, and I've just sort of been keeping up on this computer with Kyle doing most of the heavy lifting. What is the impression that you're getting from out there? What's the temperature?
It's not looking good.
What's the temperature in the room?
Everybody in the room is pretty tense. Not feeling too hot right now. Everybody's pretty,
really, I feel
pretty
hot.
anxious.
I feel like I'm real hot, like I'm about to burst into flame.
We're reminiscing about when we thought that this was all a big joke. Some people think that, are hoping that it might still be, but it's not looking good.
Yeah, if Trump manages to pull off, you know, the gotcha move at the end of this, like I never believed anything I said, and I'm actually like a totally sane person, that would be the coolest thing that ever happened in the history of the world. But
Here's hoping.
just like my optimism for the night as a whole is quick dying. I'm not putting any eggs in that basket. So if you're just joining us, this is the last episode of the Pod Couple ever. I'm Steve Hubbs. With me is Casey Sagenbell, Kyle Gherkin will return shortly, or perhaps not. I would not be surprised if I heard tires squealing and him peeling off into the night, just abandoning everything, leaving everyone behind. But thanks for joining us, nonetheless. Getting a text from my neighbor Travis, who is hotly anticipating his $20 and the bet that he's looking more and more likely to win. And he just told me the silent majority is real. Those were his words. And I always knew there was a silent subsect of the country. I just didn't fully appreciate how woefully insane they are. And as Rick pointed out before, I suppose the idea that any move is a good move because of American optimism, I guess that is a more pervasive idea than I ever anticipated. I assumed people were rational to some degree, but yeah, I've been wrong before. So right now we're looking at the New York Times again, calling the forecast at 66% for Trump. But, you know, I mean, he had like less of a chance of winning at the beginning of the night than that. So maybe Hillary still has a chance of winning.
Yeah, unfortunately, the later the night it gets, the less that those numbers become. They've actually just now flipped Pennsylvania, of all things, in his column as well. I mean, they've really got it at an absolute dead heat right now. You know, but as I say that, even it takes up to 52% chance. I mean, this is just incredible. I mean, this is it, like if he wins Pennsylvania and Michigan. I mean, these are states that were supposed to be safe Clinton states, you know, like they were states where she was up double digits very recently in the polls. Now that did tighten after the Comey letter. It did, you know, and there's always a somewhat of an expected tightening in the final week just because certain Republicans finally make their peace with Trump, maybe ones who are holding out. But to close off, you know, to close off all the way to a double-digit lead to a Trump win in the span of a couple of weeks, or at least a near double-digit win, or a polling lead is just unbelievable. I mean, these are all things that absolutely flip the polls on their heads. I mean, the pollsters are going to be out of business after this if this all holds. It's
so I'll put it to you again, Kyle. Like, how does everybody get it so wrong? What accounts for this kind of wild inaccuracy?
hard to say. Obviously, it's going to be something that is going to be talked about and dissected, and we're going to see a lot of postmortems about that going forward. I mean, again, at this point, no matter what happens, it's obviously the pollsters were wrong quite a bit, and so the final polls may have been within the margin of error, but for them to move so much so quickly. I don't know. I mean,
I have a theory, and it's that we live in an age of liars. And we have a lot of people that probably said that they weren't going to vote for Trump consistently across the board for whatever reason, maybe because they wanted to purposely mess with the media, or maybe because they were embarrassed to admit it ahead of time, or maybe just for the lulz, you know. But I really think that it's getting sort of as everything, you know, with the advent of the internet and social media and this culture of oversharing, I think people are just more likely to be secret and to systems that they feel like are designed to break them down into some kind of demographic. You know, it's this like a rebellious streak, I think, that accounts for probably a lot of the Trump voters out there to begin with. And this idea of you know, changing the game or you know, turning the election on its head. It's probably more pervasive than just a Trump vote. You know, it's a chaotic spirit that's inhabiting a very scary number of people. And then, of course, there's just people that, you know, hate abortions.
Well, not that they hate abortions, because I think most people hate abortions more than they hate the ability, the right of women to choose. But yeah, this, I don't know. You know, the thing you're talking about is what you sort of called the Trump effect. This idea that people, again, were somewhat ashamed or whatever to admit publicly that they would vote for Trump, so they wouldn't tell pollsters that, but then they would go and do it. Now, maybe that's what's happening here. However, the indications were that effect did not necessarily exist, because, at least based on the primaries, you know, he was actually slightly underperforming his polls. He wasn't showing that he, you know, there didn't seem to be some hidden segment of voters out there that were saying they were, you know, in the polls, and then they would, they wouldn't vote for him, and then somehow they showed up and secretly did. If so, he should have been overperforming his polls. Obviously, he's doing that here. So, was there somehow something different about the primaries than the general election? That's obviously, it's a totally different electorate. So maybe it's true. Maybe the primary voters, who obviously tend to be very hard right, had no problem. Maybe they'd vote for Donald Trump, whereas the general election voters were less likely to say that. So, I mean, it's hard to explain this otherwise than to say that is something that's happening. I mean, because at this point, he's just outperforming anywhere where he should have been. So, you know, is the Clinton enthusiasm down? Is it underwhelming for what we saw? I mean, I don't know. I mean, the turnout overall appears to be up in a lot of places. I mean, certainly in Florida, you know, we're seeing, it's not like people aren't coming out to vote, and they aren't coming out to vote for both candidates. But anyway, at present, again, the New York Times gives 73% chance of Trump becoming president. It's nearing the levels at which it started with Clinton at an 80% chance way back before he started, and so Trump is approaching the initial projection for Clinton. They've almost completely flip-flopped at this point. And I mean, we can only hope that there's something here which they're not seeing, which their numbers aren't taking into account. Some vote in Pennsylvania and Michigan that's just getting missed. I mean, we are at 33% in Pennsylvania and 26% in Michigan. There's still a lot of votes to be counted. But you know, these formulas, these forecasting formulas, tend to be fairly good about being able to predict some of those things. So anyway, Michigan's now moved up to 60%, and 60% confidence anyway with their model. So yeah, this is definitely dark times. If we we absolutely need something to happen here with Pennsylvania and Michigan. Florida looks to be a lost cause at this point. North Carolina looks to be a lost cause. I guess Iowa's still in play, but again, with the trend line here, if Clinton can't win Florida and she can't win North Carolina, it seems unlikely she's going to win Iowa. Or, for example, a state like Arizona, which now has 38% of the votes in and 86% chance to Trump. So it looks like it's gonna come down to some. If she's gonna pull this thing out, it's gonna have to be some kind of Pennsylvania, Michigan late pullout. So we're now joined by. Well, we're not joined by somebody else. We were potentially joined by someone else. Okay, we will be joined by Delaney, who made a very brief appearance on the program a while back. She had about a little 5 to 10 minute segment where she talked about TV with us. So we definitely watched some horrifying things on Game of Thrones. We talked about some of those horrifying things. Were any of the scenes in Game of Thrones more horrifying than what you're seeing right now?
Not even close.
You have some family in Michigan. You've made some trips there. What the hell is wrong with Michigan? What are they doing up there? What is happening right now to give Trump the the lead? I'm not saying like your family specific. I'm saying like you've been around, you've been to Michigan, you've made a lot of flights there. Do you have any ideas here? What's any insight?
Well, as you know, I don't talk about politics that often, so I don't have much insight.
I'm saying if you just looked around, you see anything that might have led you to believe that Michigan was going to go this direction.
No.
Okay. Well, thank you for the analysis. Look, we're grasping at straws here. We have to try to find some ray of hope in an increasingly dark night here.
It's rigged.
Well, I'm just hopeful that based on the percentage of votes that have been counted, a lot of them are not, besides Florida, they're not close to 100% yet. So I'm just hopeful that there are like pockets of Clinton supporters in there and that it'll just swing back the other way. We were just joking out in the living room that the news is just presenting it this way to make everybody be like, whoa, no, Trump, whoa. And then it's going to swing back the other way. And so that's what I'm hoping.
It would be a hilarious instance of an actual rigged media. If like the media got so fed up with the way Trump was talking about them this entire time that they all collaborated to make him think he was getting the presidency and then swept it all away at the last minute.
Here's the other, where's Michigan? Here's the other 51% of Michigan, and they're all, oh no, not 51. 32% of Michigan. No, they're not 32.
36.
Where's my
6.
No, right here. That's 28% of the votes in.
Oh, yeah.
So it's 62. 62% of Michigan is all for Hillary. So like she wins.
Can we just go ahead and just count those votes for Hillary and not have to actually go to the ballots?
Yeah, I'd take a rig system at this point. I'd be okay with cheating.
So do you guys know, you are connected to Twitter for your feed. Do you guys know if, like Facebook, certain people or click to certain things, does Twitter like feed you things along those same lines that like you already kind of like, just like Facebook does? Or is it just like if I click on a hashtag, is it literally everyone who's tweeting with that hashtag right then? Because I feel like I was just on Twitter like 20 minutes ago or something, and I feel like, you know, the good majority, like I would say 90% of the tweets I were reading were obviously pro Clinton. So like, how is it that we're looking at the numbers that we're looking at, you know? Or is it just Twitter feeding me the things that I've already like kind
I
of
mean, I don't
liked?
know it to a certainty, but I would definitely not be surprised if that's what they were doing.
I don't think they actually do, but what was the hashtag you were clicking on?
Election 2016 or something?
Yeah.
Something very generic, like not partisan or...
It's also, you know, it would stand to reason that perhaps Trump's support doesn't really lie in the Twitterverse.
Right.
Know?
Yeah, that's true. Because there's obviously a lot of intelligent, like funny people out there. And they're all pulling for Clinton.
We've now reached the dreaded 80% chance for Trump, according to the New York Times forecast. That is where Clinton started at the night. So they have completely flip-flopped as of 8:18 p.m. Mountain Standard Time.
But with Clinton still up on the popular vote.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question Clinton is going to win the popular vote. We're increasingly looking like we're going to have a split popular vote, electoral vote situation, which, you know, again, we've had only 3 times in history. 2 of those were in the 1800s. One was, of course, famously the 2000 election with Bush and Gore.
And so do you see shades of that and the aftermath of that coming in? Are we looking at recounts potentially? Well, we're looking at investigations into, you know, voter fraud or voter...
I was wondering the same thing.
Well, it all depends.
Intimidation, I guess.
Yeah, well, it all depends how close it is, right? If like a tipping point state, like say Michigan really is the difference between winning and losing, and it comes down to, you know, like, you know, a few thousand votes, then absolutely we're going to see a recount. If it's, you know, if it's much bigger, then probably not. I think, you know, with just in general, I mean, there are lawyers and data analysts and different people like that are, you know, they know what the numbers are, again, what are they're projected to look like for different counties, different precincts, etc. And if those numbers are way out of line with the projections, they're going to look at those individual precincts and say, you know, well, what happened here? Were there some irregularities? But it's one of those things that is not, you know, whether that's going to tip the election or not is as unlikely unless it is very, very close and it comes down to one state and, you know, a few thousand votes. So again, it's a wait and see at this moment, but
I did get a text from Chris, and he was curious as to whether or not the politics segment of the podcast was over yet, and if we were going to be talking about Westworld. So good to know the audience is interacting, and they're as thrilled about the way things are going as we are.
I was just asked to discuss, there was a apparent polling place shooting.
Oh, in California.
Yeah. Have you heard anything about this?
I just heard that someone shot, I think, 2 people in Azusa, which is actually where I had one of my sites. And they were directing voters to other, like, nearby polling facilities. But that's all I know. Is that what you're seeing?
Yeah, it doesn't look like it actually necessarily had to do with voting per se. It looks like it was just near, from what I'm seeing anyway. It was just near that place.
And Azusa's on the east side of LA.
Yeah, and obviously, yeah, it does. It's all breaking news right now, but yeah, it does seem that we have one dead victim. It's unclear whether the other people are alive, but yeah, I guess otherwise, hard to say what much else about it at this point. I don't think there's enough information. So, well, that's bad news. Again, it doesn't seem directly related to this election. It doesn't seem like it was a dispute over voting per se that caused it. But nevertheless, a bad report.
We're now well into the second hour of election night coverage here at the Pod Couple. Where you can anticipate basically moving to the microphone for the remainder of this podcast. On the plus side, I've been told I have a very melodious weep.
I'm going to briefly step out. I'm going to let Noah step in here for a return appearance. Looks like he has something to share.
And I'm going to step out too to put our little guy to bed.
As far as all the numbers that I'm looking at, I don't know exactly what you guys covered in the last half hour or so because I was getting a breath of fresh air. It seems to be getting worse and worse for Clinton in every state. Ohio, North Carolina, she's just falling further and further behind. So I guess my question to you, Steve, would be, with the way that Donald Trump behaved during his campaign, it does seem like he would be a lot more likely to be impeached pretty quickly as president. And I don't know if you guys discussed the possibility of Mike Pence being president and how you feel about that versus Donald Trump, but you would have to feel like there's at least like a decent chance that he would get impeached in the first couple years or something.
I mean, it feels like however this shakes out. This is the thing with Trump is that you hear leading up to this election about Republicans coming home, about how he's brought a lot of people that had a heavy distaste for him, and let's not forget he still is the most disliked presidential candidate in history and soon to be, I guess, the most disliked president ever elected. But it does say something about the lines that he's drawn within the Republican Party itself. And I don't know how likely we are to see an impeachment. It's certainly not something that I would put past Donald Trump. I wouldn't be surprised if he did something that was impeachment worthy on the first day. Like, just sheer fucking ludicrous Trumposity. But Mike Pence is like a pretty dangerous dude. He's got some pretty backwards ideas, and so he's obviously much more of a statesman, at least in manner and tone, than Donald Trump. But he, as a president, his views on women, primarily his views on the LGBTQ community, they're pretty backward thinking, and so it's really not good either way. But what is going to be interesting is like how much gridlock Donald Trump is going to have to deal with moving forward, not just from the Democrats, because it's what we're seeing here is the Senate and House will be all Republican. That's the way that it's looking, as well as the Republican presidency. So that's a time in which you should theoretically be able to get a lot of stuff done. But because of Trump's fracturing of the Republican Party, I'm not so sure that that's even possible. I mean, he's, burned sort of the mainstay Republicans like Paul Ryan, guys like Lindsey Graham. And so it's going to be interesting to see if they can even work together, let alone to see what the Democrats are going to do. I mean, if they're just going to be like filibustering the shit out of everything for 4 years or however long it takes, for, I don't know, Trump to choke on a hot wing or something. Just like gets taken out by a taco bowl. Who knows?
I wanted to reward you with a bigger laugh on the air, but I didn't have it in me.
Yeah, it's pretty.
It's probably hard to do a podcast when you're completely out of it after taking a haymaker. Yeah,
it feels like I'm pretty surprised. I haven't had like a stroke. Like I'm still speaking English. That the fact that I'm doing that at all is a real testament to my fortitude, because I'm like. Also, like, there's no booze. There's no booze here. Where's the booze, man? How did we not think to bring booze? So they're calling Ohio for Trump. Looks like right now the New York Times forecast chance of Trump presidency 86%.
Oh,
wow.
That is out of leaning towards and well into likely territory. And it does look like Iowa is now Pennsylvania for Trump. Florida managed to hold that. So the blue wall, apparently Donald Trump really does know about walls. He might not have a good plan to build one, but he certainly seems like he's able to break a blue one.
Looks like there was just a call for Ohio. Did you guys talk about that?
Case brought it up.
They pushed him to 86%, likely to win.
Yeah, obviously the numbers just keep looking worse. Pennsylvania is up to 62%. It's got Michigan now at 69, and she needs both of those. She's going to pull this thing out. They've got Wisconsin in his camp too now at 60. Oh, well. I mean, at this point, unless there's something seriously wrong with their numbers, I don't see any way that Clinton wins this. I mean, there's
this biggest political heartbreak of your life, Kyle.
Of course. I mean, there's no question. I mean, 2004 was the previous winner in that regard. And, I was stunned that after 4 years of Bush that he could get reelected. But I mean, at least he was an incumbent, had all the advantages of an incumbency. And, as bad as Bush was as a president, he was a sane adult. I just feel like maybe I'm going to wake up and this is going to be a bad dream, or at this juncture, I'm just stunned. I mean, I don't know what else to say. He's he didn't just, if you pick again, if this all holds, I mean, not just picking off one of the wall states, which would have been sort of incredible in and of itself if he had done one, but to get Wisconsin and Pennsylvania and Michigan, I mean, that was just unthinkable before. about an hour ago. So I'm just trying to reckon with it in my mind right now. I'm sure this is not very compelling, but I imagine that the feelings here are probably mirroring what a lot of the listeners are feeling. I mean, with the exception of Travis, I guess. So
yeah, but he didn't even vote.
Yeah, well, even better. Yeah, I don't have any words. I mean, this is terrible. This is again, this is the only thing I can say, I guess, is that if you want to look at any kind of silver lining, is that this will be America's chance to really, prove that it is strong enough to be able to overcome someone like Donald Trump and not fall apart. I mean, this is going to be a test unlike, I think, probably any we've had since I don't know when, the Civil War. I mean, maybe people think that's hyperbole. I'm sure a lot of people say that's ridiculous and totally overstating the case. But I don't know. I mean, I'm sure we've had incompetent presidents before. Maybe, I don't know if they've ever been on this scale, but if they have, it's when America was a much younger country. Certainly not a force in the world like we are now. Certainly not, keeper of the international order. Certainly not a nuclear power. These are all things that we're going to have to contend with Donald Trump being in charge of. And again, it's going to be a test. It's going to be an extreme test. So if America can prove stronger than perhaps I think that it is, then that will be something.
Well, it already proved dumber than you thought that it was. So,
yeah.
World's full of surprises, buddy.
I suppose so. I guess, again, looking for silver linings here, which is hard to do at this juncture, but the late night shows are probably going to, could probably fire all their writing staffs, save some money there. I'll have unending humor fodder for the next 4 years. Hard to, find too much jocularity in that at the moment, but anyway.
One question I had posed to Steve when he stepped out was like, the possibility of an impeachment, at some point with, Trump doing something erratic or whatever, and then like a Mike Pence presidency. What would be your thoughts on that? And then Steve also brought up the point with the Senate and the House going Republican, if they would really all be aligned as well as they normally are, since the Republican Party, a lot of the people in those positions don't share Donald Trump's views. And so there might be a little more in his way than what there would be if it was like, Mitt Romney or somebody at the top.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can see I think I really have a lot of faith in the Republican Congress, because if you look at all the moral courage they displayed during the course of the campaign and the incredible backbone that they showed, you can see that they're obviously going to be able to stand for President Trump. Oh yeah, right. They were fucking worthless, and now they allowed this guy to happen. And he had absolutely no power at all. Like, I wonder if they're going to do better when he's the most powerful man in the world. So, I mean, I don't see that being something that happens as you may gather from that. I don't know. I don't think that they, I don't think they're going to be much of a check on him at all. I mean, certainly with the evidence so far is not inspiring. I mean, this is, you have to start thinking about the implications here. The Supreme Court now is going to be going to have a majority of conservatives, and things like Roe v. Wade are actually in danger now. I mean, this is an incredibly pivotal moment in the country's history. And yeah, as far as a Pence presidency, I mean, certainly it would be preferable just to the standpoint that Pence seems like guy is sane, and knows a little bit about government. I don't think I don't really agree with anything he says, and I think that he's not someone I would be remotely excited about under almost any circumstances, except for the replacing Donald Trump circumstance. Yeah, I mean, I'll take that over Trump. It's the lowest of low bars. But anyway, I need to step away again in a moment. I'll let you take over, Steve.
All right, here we go. I am not sure what to do here. I should have brought some sort of like prepared poem or something, some like dirge that I could just turn to at this point. But turning back to the numbers, I guess, is the easiest thing to do. We do have the presidential forecast through the New York Times at 89% for Trump, with Clinton ahead in the popular vote. Looks like Trump is forecasted at this point 289 electoral votes. Again, Pennsylvania, Florida, North Carolina, Wisconsin, Michigan, Arizona, Georgia, Utah, and Alaska, all going for Trump. On Clinton's side, Colorado, Minnesota, Nevada, Virginia, New Hampshire, and Iowa. She's barely ahead in Iowa. But yeah, an amazing, almost like laughable inaccuracy in the estimated predictions. Again, Clinton starting out with an 80% chance hours ago. And it looks like Hillary Clinton is projected to win Virginia. That is some late news coming in. 94% of the votes are in there, so that's probably pretty solid. And yeah, just how did it happen is, I think, a question we will be asking ourselves, and we'll be getting a lot of information on in the coming days. The short answer is that people are crazy, and you could probably expound upon that in a myriad ways, but hey, let's call a spade a spade. Everyone is dumb except me, as I've long said.
We're now at 91% chance of Trump, according to the New York Times forecast. I keep hoping this forecast is going to go backwards at least a little bit. But
well, if the forecast doesn't, at least the country can.
Well, they have now called New Mexico for Clinton, so hey. And Virginia. So that doesn't really do us a lot of good at this point. But yeah, we need Colorado. Colorado was one of the ones I was actually worried about, and that one looks like it's safe. But again, all going to be irrelevant. With Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin off the board, which again looks increasingly likely, which is why their percentage keeps ticking upwards. 538 currently has Clinton at a 52% chance of winning, which would seem to provide some possible hope here, but that number, I guess, is only basing it on the called states, and it's not taking into account the margins, how far behind she is in some of these states. So probably not really something that can be counted on. So, do we have another guest? We do not. So, sorry to tease the audience there. I'm sure you're on, and see who we could bring on next to be depressed. Okay. Well, actually, we do have a guest. So, how depressed are you right this moment? This is Carol L.
I'm still very hopeful because I am a positive thinker, and I am just counting on her eking out the win somehow, some way. Unless you guys mathematically prove me wrong right now.
Well, again, all we could look at are the results that we're seeing come in. The New York Times is reporting. There's no reason to think it's unreliable at this stage, but that's basically what it has. It has to be unreliable for Clinton to have a chance at this point, because their numbers are showing her behind in Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin by margins which look unlikely to be made up with the remaining votes, and that's it. That's the ball game. I mean, if she can't, like I said, unless these numbers are wrong in some way, unless they've really missed the mark somehow with this forecasting model that they're using, and these numbers swing back the other way quite dramatically, then it's over.
Here's a little piece of local news that might be interesting, something perhaps positive amidst all the chaos and shenanigans. Joe Arpaio is trailing in early polls by 83,000 votes to Democrat Paul Penzone. So if Arpaio loses this election, I think this is like his 5th re-election or something ridiculous. So, and he's been unstoppable heretofore. So let's keep an eye on that.
Yeah, I mean,
that's the thing. We've been focusing on Trump too. How much have you seen? What are you seeing down ballot?
Oh, it's not good at all.
Great.
The Senate now, they're showing a greater than 95% chance for Republicans to control the Senate. The House is already a foregone conclusion. So the House, the Senate, entire Congress will be under Republican control. The White House will be under Republican/crazy man control. And once they appoint the Supreme Court justice, which the Democrats have no way of stopping, will be certainly super conservative, the Supreme Court will also be under Republican control. So the legislative, judicial, and executive branch of the government will all three be under Republican control.
Okay, now I'm depressed. Thanks, guys.
That's what we do.
Yeah, that was great. I like being in the other room better. It's more positive. So
yeah, this is like an episode of Black Mirror.
I just don't understand why so many people think Trump cares about them and is going to be their voice, because he's been around a long time and Trump only has a voice for himself.
Yeah. Well, I concur. But it
certainly doesn't speak for
name
me.
recognition apparently goes a lot farther than people ever anticipated. If you put your name in gold letters on a building, enough people will assume you know what you're doing, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I guess at this point, it it becomes imperative that we have to start thinking about fighting this this presidency. I don't mean, of course, I mean politically, but we have to start figuring out ways tomorrow to organize and to get better better equipped to be able to try to change the game in future elections, starting is in 2018 and even I mean everything. It doesn't matter, I mean, whether you're talking about school boards, whether you're talking about state legislative seats, whether you're talking about city council. I mean, all the way across the board, like, we have to get involved, and we have to build, obviously, a stronger coalition, because we can't let something like this happen ever again. So that's the job for people like us at this point,
Or cyanide.
Well, that's certainly one option. A lot of people say leave the country, right? Like, that's always a popular thing anytime somebody like this, somebody so polarizing, although I don't think we've ever had anyone quite like Donald Trump. But
yeah, do you think we will actually see like a probably the biggest migration that I can think of due to this? Not to say that would be a substantial number, but I'm sure anyone keeping track would say, like, yeah, actually a lot of people did move to Canada.
Yeah.
Well, all the immigrants better move, because he's going to kick them out.
Well, I think that, I mean, this is one thing that will be interesting, right? Like, it'll be interesting to see, like, what happens with his followers when he does not follow through on his promises, because, I cannot, I mean, at this point, I guess, what am I saying? Like, I say I cannot imagine things, but, like, I cannot imagine this. So I guess, who knows? Maybe we will have a wall, and maybe we will have a a Muslim ban and everything. I mean, these are all things that were unthinkable, even under Donald Trump presidency. But but who knows? But I guess my thought was to say, when these things don't happen, when he doesn't actually do all the things he promised, all the absurd things he promised, like, how do his followers react? How do his supporters react when he says, oh, like, yeah, we looked into it, the wall's not going to work out,
Or they're not going to pay for
like,
it.
Yeah. Like, or what? Or did they do something symbolic? Does he build like 100-yard wall, and say, there you go, we built the wall, and then it's done? I mean, does he blame it on funding and blame it on the Democrats? Or, I mean, I don't know, but I guess that's one of the things that will be playing out, obviously, over the next few years. And does that create a backlash? Do the people feel betrayed, or do they just, go along with it and say, and buy whatever excuses that he gives them, hook, line, and sinker? Or does this stuff happen? Do we just, does everything we thought we knew as a country?
How are you going to feel? How are you going to feel when he does every single thing that he said he was going to do?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, anything's on the table, I suppose. But
Well, he said make America great again, so he wants to go backwards, and where some people thought it was great, I suppose.
I just can't wait till we start handing out nukes like candy.
yeah, obviously that's the nightmare scenario. Colorado was just called for Clinton.
The chillest state, of course.
But again, as we've discussed before, the Colorado is not going to mean a whole lot here with these other states off the board. I guess, other local sort of news. I don't know how the marijuana prop is doing, but hopefully well, because I think, we're all
You're going full Tommy Chong from here on out.
we're all going to be in a marijuana fueled haze for the next 4 years.
23% reporting on that Prop 205 about the privatization or the legalization of marijuana, and it looks like pretty early, only 23% reporting in, but it is 53 no, 47 yes. 206, the minimum wage and mandated paid sick time for employees is at this point 60% yes. So that still time to turn it around on the old marijuana front.
We're gonna need it. I'm gonna need it tonight.
Yeah, I'll have to make a few phone calls.
So yeah, so no pot either. All right, well, good. Let's just make it a clean sweep, I guess, at this point. Maybe Ohio can lose, and then
Yeah. From what I'm seeing, Penzona's been leading
Yeah.
so far.
Yeah.
I think he'll lose.
and then he will immediately be put in Donald Trump's cabinet
Yes,
as the
exactly.
Secretary of Defense or the Secretary of
Yeah.
Homeland Security, most likely. So that the one piece of good news will probably be reversed very quickly. So,
What does a Donald Trump cabinet look like, Kyle?
well, we've already seen a preview of it. They've released, sort of their preliminary picks, and they were, had Newt Gingrich as Secretary of State, Lieutenant Michael Flynn, or Lieutenant General Michael Flynn as Secretary of Defense.
Where's Sarah Palin gonna
Ryan's-
fit in here?
Reince Priebus as the Chief of Staff. Who else? Giuliani is, I believe, Attorney General. So yeah, it's looking good. It's the dream team.
Well, for some reason, the 538 website is still predicting a slight win by Clinton. I'm just hanging my hat on that.
Yeah, I think that that's.
I'm hoping they know what they're talking about, that there's a chance. See? Barely.
This is a post, seeing a Twitter post from Jessica Taylor, who I assume is a reporter, but she's saying that the Republicans' internal polls weren't predicting this either. It's a Senate House government source that I talked to all expected Clinton would win per their own internal polls. So, the polling seems to have been off, again, not just the public polls, which we are, which we've all been privy to, but the actual internal polls in many cases have considered to be more accurate or better, because the campaigns just have a lot more money, right? They have a lot more money to spend on polling than news organizations now, which always have, the budgets have gotten tighter and tighter for polling. So one idea was that internally that these parties have a much better idea of what's going to actually happen. And of course they don't share those numbers. The Clinton campaign definitely felt good about their internal polls. In many ways, I think they felt their internal polls were stronger than the public polls. And apparently now we're hearing that the Republicans' internal polls were also showing. So it's not just the public polls that got things wrong, but apparently the internal ones too. I mean, we're just seeing an across the board complete, shakeup that doesn't that nobody predicted, nobody saw coming.
How worried do you think Hillary Clinton is right now about going to jail?
That is a good question. Yeah, I mean, again, it's scary, man. I mean, who knows? Donald Trump has, he in his first 100 days speech, he basically talked, his thing started out was how he's going to sue all these women that have accused him of sexual assault. In one of his last speeches before he, at the end of the campaign, he just talked about all the scores he was going to settle. So, I mean, this is a man who has shown over and over again that he is very focused on vengeance. He said, that if someone harms you or your reputation, he goes after them, and tries to do 10 times worse. But his standards for such a thing are very, very low. I mean, anything from making fun of the size of his hands to a beauty queen criticizing him or whatever, the most minor provocations, tweets, negative tweets, stuff. He has shown a propensity to be very very sensitive and to have a backlash to. So he's now going to be invested with an enormous amount of power, and that makes all that very terrifying.
Yeah. So what you're saying is Rosie O'Donnell is dead.
Yeah.
She's dog meat.
Yeah, she probably should move to a different country because she might need to get some kind
Should we?
Yeah, the pod couple might be able to fly under the radar, but who knows? I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's terrifying, really. I mean, to say like what's gonna have that, ultimately, like I want to say, well, it's a lot of bluster, and in the end, like he's not going to do anything to someone like Clinton. He's not going to put her in jail. He's not going to do whatever. These public figures are not going to not really going to fall through with any of the craziest talk that he's said. These sort of offhand comments, but you just don't know. I mean, that's the thing. He's certainly. There's nothing in his character that has made us think that he's not capable of acting out in a very dangerous, unprecedented way. So, it's really, again, this is why I say it's going to be a collision of our institutions, our democratic norms, our Constitution with somebody who really doesn't respect any of those things. And if that person's the president, like what wins? I mean, we're going to find out.
Bummer.
Well, that's a pretty good summation of the night, I suppose. How are those fire ants doing right about now?
Oh, it's horrible, man. It's real bad, buddy. It's real bad. I'm not sure if I'm more surprised by my lack of surprise, because like you always think to yourself, like, in my heart, I must be more cynical. Like it must be a character flaw, my deep cynicism, and the real world can't actually be that bad. But then whenever I expect the worst, I'm constantly right. So it's like, fuck, man. Like, what do I do with that? How do I cope with the notion that like so many people in this country got it so wrong? Like their fundamental viewpoint is like insane to me, Where is there a place for me in this world? I heard that San Francisco has an initiative on the ballot to let 16 and 17-year-olds vote. What's that gonna be like? Couldn't be any worse. Let's let 3-year-olds vote.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, obviously it's I think that, the impulse to flee the country is an understandable one, but I do think that, at this juncture, the country is going to need every, rational person, who sees this man for the danger that he is, to stay and be prepared to fight back, against all the dangers here. If the country's going to make it through the next 4 years, hopefully only 4 years. I mean, I don't even want to think about 8 years of Trump. But it's hard enough to come to terms with 4 at the moment. But I think that's going to be, it's going to be key. I mean, and the thing is, at the end of the day, it still looks like more than half the country is going to have voted against Trump. So even though his electoral margin may be fairly large, it's certainly going to make it hard to make the argument that he has a popular mandate. And that's a lot of people, who ultimately can oppose the Trump administration and try to limit the damage. But that's the best we can do at this point. Is looks like is limit the damage. I mean, I don't. I want to check in with our election desk here. Have we had any more calls?
California and Hawaii is pretty exciting. They call it Idaho for Trump. Hillary's got a 2.5% lead in Pennsylvania right now. About 70% reported in. Wisconsin looks bad for Hillary. She's down 3%, but I keep reading that it's not likely to be made up. So I think Pennsylvania, she could still hang on possibly, but Wisconsin, probably she's going to probably lose.
Are you seeing it? So I don't know how much that got picked up, but essentially, we had calls in states like California and Hawaii, which obviously were locked. But as far as the states that are in play here, sounds like Pennsylvania may be back in play for Clinton, seeing a lead for her right there at the moment, although it's not being reflected on the New York Times yet. They've still got a 65% chance for Trump, but apparently the CNN coverage is showing her with a 2% lead. Are you seeing anything with Michigan that indicates anything promising?
I still think it's up for grabs. North Carolina looks like it's going to Trump. He's up 5% with only 7% left to report.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say North Carolina looks like he's out of reach. So, I mean, it's
Arizona, we could possibly factor in if Hillary rallies. 3% lead for Trump with 60% of the vote in.
Yeah, again, the New York Times forecast giving a greater than 95% chance to Trump of taking Arizona. So that, again, whatever that's worth, certainly doesn't seem like it's in play according to this forecast. But yeah, at this point, just looking for a miracle out of Pennsylvania and Michigan. If she can pull both of those back into her camp, she's won the other states I think she needs to win. The Colorado, Nevada, New Hampshire, she's still leading. Virginia, we had a call there. So the very narrowest of Clinton victories can still happen, but there's got to be a miracle here with Pennsylvania and Michigan. And
30,000 votes lead for Trump in Michigan with 50% in, so it's only 30,000.
30,000 votes. What about Pennsylvania? You see you have her leading Pennsylvania right now?
Yeah.
So she can
down by like 1.5%. In Michigan, it's up by 2.5%.
So if she can pull Pennsylvania out, you got to make up 30,000 votes in Michigan, which doesn't seem impossible, but yeah, we're looking at a greater than 95% Trump forecast here from New York Times. So they're obviously not seeing that path as being very likely for whatever reason. Well, we're into hour 3 here. We've been on the air for a little over 2 hours, and I did not think that we would still be broadcasting at this point in time.
Yeah.
I thought we would have a call here sometime, maybe 8:30ish at the latest. But
How often things like this goes this late?
Well, again, it all just depends on the margin, it all depends on how close it's going to be. And when it comes down to, one state or something, I think that, yeah, a lot of times you head towards midnight Eastern time, but I imagine we'll have a call in the next hour. And unfortunately, that's most likely going to be a call for Trump. I wonder if any of the major news outlets have called it for Trump at this point, like Fox, for example.
They haven't yet, but they have him with more electoral votes. They have him over 200 already, like 212.
Well, so no call from any major organizations at present, including Fox News, although I imagine they're rather giddy about the prospect of being able to call this thing. And yeah, I mean, was the country really not ready for a woman, or was the country just not ready for Hillary Clinton? Or a little bit of both?
Probably a little bit of both. Certainly didn't help that the woman was Hillary Clinton. I will say that. But yeah, it's kind of hard to know where the split is in something like that. North Carolina has been called, according to CNN, for Donald Trump just now. He was expected to do well there.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, like I said, it looked like that was pretty much looking like a lock, and so it's not surprising to see that call. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it will be, one of my friends who is was a huge Bernie Sanders supporter, is already, has certainly been, has been very critical of Clinton along the way, and essentially making the argument that she was a super weak candidate and that like Bernie would have been a much stronger candidate. And, of course, my argument is always been that that's super easy to say, because it's like unprovable, it's counterfactual. I mean, you can say, oh, well, he had like way better favorables in polls and stuff like way back in the primaries. But again, like we don't know how Bernie Sanders would have come through, months of campaigning and obviously had like the full heat of the Republican attack machine turned up against him for, months on end. But, certainly obviously from what we know that, Clinton had more smoke, more skeletons in the closet, so to speak, to be able to harp on. But like, I think it's even difficult to say with someone like Sanders, like first off, what would they have found? Would they have found some stuff? And even if they didn't find some stuff, would they have just been able to make up stuff? I mean, essentially, again, we had the famous swift boating of John Kerry, who was a war hero, and then somehow got turned into like a coward who betrayed the country.
Yeah.
Based on
yes. Thanks for your service, John.
Essentially, no evidence. We've seen these things happen before. Obama, obviously, like based on zero evidence, the question whether he was even American. So it's not like things just made up, and we wouldn't have seen things made up about Sanders now. Would that have made, ultimately things he could have gotten through, and could he have defeated Donald Trump? I mean, I know his age would have been an issue. Obviously, Trump is no spring chicken, but Sanders would have been the oldest candidate ever to assume the presidency if he'd won it. Obviously, I'm sure they would have made a lot of hay about that. So who knows? I mean, in the end, obviously, at this point, staring on the barrel of the Trump presidency, it's like, sure, let's give Sanders a shot, see how that works out.
Yeah.
Can we run this back and try it that way? But again, this is not something that no one did predict this, other than, I mean, obviously some people predicted it, but nobody who was looking at numbers and data predicted this. And so who knows? But I don't know. I mean, it was Clinton indeed a particularly vulnerable candidate? Was the 30 years of demonizing that happened by Fox News and other Republican radio programs and everything else on the right-wing media, was the damage too deep to overcome?
Well, the emails didn't help.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the big question, of course, is going to be, did the Comey letter, the FBI thing, did that actually throw the race? I mean, certainly at this point, it made it looks like it went close enough that it did, but we don't know. I mean, was it really? Did Sheriff was really as big as it seemed to be before that letter, or was that all evaporating anyway? I mean, we'll never know. It's not something you can disentangle. I'm sure there'll be lots of theories and there'll be lots of speculation, but certainly that's probably always going to be in the narrative of this election as it's reported in history. That's going to play an outsized role, certainly, and there's always going to be that lingering question about whether that did it, and the stain on that, especially if a Trump presidency turns out as bad as we imagine. What is the responsibility with the FBI, with James Comey? I don't know. Again, these are all things that we'll have to divert in history. But
think a place like Sweden is just like, what the fuck? Looking at us like, are you serious? Or, like, but in a Swedish voice.
yeah, I mean, I've heard, I've heard many reports, I'm sure you have too, that the whole world was very terrified here, and that they've been, saying, like, all these different leaders from different countries, the top diplomats, and people have been saying, like he's not really going for president, right? Like, this is crazy, and people like Obama and whatnot have been reassuring them, saying, don't worry about it, we got this, we're going to beat him. Like, it's not something you need to get in a panic over. But again, like many other things, that was wrong. So yeah, I mean, there's no question the world is very, very worried. I mean, leaders all around the world are terrified of a Trump presidency. The populations of these other countries are terrified of a Trump presidency. I mean, they've so whether, I'm sure they're all around the world, eyes are on this election. Obviously, the United States is the leader of the world, and I know that the worry that we're feeling is certainly not contained to these borders. So anyway, what is there anything you think that would make you feel better in the next 2 months? Like, again, assuming Trump wins, which looks very, very much the case at this point. Is there anything that makes you going to make you feel better over the next 2 months that he does to prior to taking the Oval Office?
I mean, you could just like have a heart attack, you know,
Okay.
like short of that, like, no, I mean, like really nothing. It's not going to get better. It's only going to get worse, man.
What do you think the odds are that he does the walk-off home run routine that he sort of joked about in the during part of the campaign? The idea that he just said, "I just wanted to prove I could win," and then basically resigns immediately and lets Mike Pence be president.
40-60. That would be all right, I guess. Like you said, anything's preferable.
Looks like it's been called for Penzone.
No,
and,
Sheriff Joe Arpaio ousted.
They're calling it,
The
huh?
people have spoken. 55% of the votes have been called for Penzone.
Wow.
So there you go, Arizona. You are full of surprises.
Go figure.
Yeah, it's I mean, that's obviously the only bit of good news I think we've had this entire night.
Yeah, that's it.
Like if Arpaio gets appointed to Trump's cabinet, then it'll probably obviate any good
Right.
news that we're hearing
But
here.
for now,
But at least
that one little tidbit.
at least Arizona voters rejected the long terrible legacy of Joe Arpaio. So this is the voters have spoken in a positive way for once tonight. Hard to get too excited about it given the headline here. It says this is from Sam Wang, who does the Princeton Election Consortium, which famously was giving Clinton a 99% chance of winning before Fiardo. He's saying that using the objection to the New York Times, Trump outperforming his pre-election polling margins by a median of 4 points. In Senate states, Republicans are outperforming by 6 points. A 5-point percentage point polling miss would be a tremendous error by modern polling standards. So undecided or minor party voters coming home to Trump, shy Trump voters, I don't know. But it would seem to me one of those two things is happening. Either you're having independents breaking very heavily for Trump, and third party voters breaking heavily to Trump, or we have that Trump effect where people didn't want to admit they were voting for him, or some combination of the two. But that would seem to be the only explanations for this very different result. We have any new calls from the election desk?
Michigan is within like 20,000 votes, Trump leading. So it's really tightened up.
Michigan within 20,000 votes.
50% report, and Trump's up by 22,000.
What do we have Pennsylvania at this point?
I don't have that right now. Last I saw it was, here we go. 2.3% lead, 74% reporting. Clinton is up by 105,000.
Clinton up by 105,000 in Pennsylvania. I don't know why the New York Times doesn't show.
Trump's winning New Hampshire by 9,000.
Yeah, it's weird. Obviously, the Times is using something very different from what you're seeing over there at CNN, because they have New Hampshire with a 68% chance of the Democrats winning. They have Pennsylvania with a 61% chance of Republicans winning, yet CNN is showing, I think, so again, they obviously are projecting out certain counties that must not be reporting in because those numbers disagree with what
Maybe it's they've been hacked. Maybe the New York Times website's been hacked by Russians. Maybe the whole system's been hacked by Russians.
That would
man.
be nice. That would certainly be if that was the explanation for this. Is this that?
So let's get down to the real numbers. Who do you think's going to win Alaska?
Yeah, I accidentally clicked on Alaska. Not a lot of suspense there. Well,
and on we go, sir.
I really was not planning to have to talk this long tonight.
It's a difficult thing to do when you feel like your tongue's going to fall out of your mouth. When your fingernails drop out of your skin.
And it's difficult when you, again, like there's not a lot of good news, and there's not a lot of news of any kind. I mean, at this point, we just are seeing a slow, like approaching train wreck, essentially. And so, how do you describe that? You know, how do you comment on that? I mean, we've kind of covered all these things that can be all the different angles on that, and so at this point it really just it's like just waiting for that inevitable collision. What, on a scale of 1 to 10, how concerned are you now?
Oh, I'm still at a 56.
Okay.
Yeah,
from an 11 to a 56.
I'm extremely concerned, man. I mean, this is like in my head, all my anxieties spinning out. So it's like under a Trump presidency, what do we see? Well, terrorism goes up because basically he scares Muslims. So their reaction is like increased rates of terrorism, increased hatred for America, which means security at home tightens, which means privacy goes down. So we'll all be fucking terrified and we won't have any secrets. And it's just going to be, you know, the logical extension of the rhetoric that he's been espousing this entire time. You know, people are going to be poor and scared and just like, I don't know, man. It's not good.
The host of The Fucking Apprentice is about to be the president of the United States.
It's like unbelievable to me. It's the most bizarre thing imaginable. If, like, 20 years ago, I said, you know who's going to be president in 20 years? Jeff Probst. You know, you'd be like, that's ludicrous. And that wouldn't even be as crazy as this.
Yeah, Jeff Probst is likable.
Jeff Probst is a good guy. He's a goat. Man, we really love our celebrities here, right? Schwarzenegger, Jesse the Body Ventura.
I mean, I really feel like if this was,
it's just going to be actors
plot
running for the presidency from now on. Now that everybody knows this is all you need to do. Can you imagine if fucking Brad Pitt had run on the Democratic side? It would have destroyed.
I mean, again, there have been various movies like Head of State where Chris Rock somehow becomes the president.
Yeah.
This is pre-Obama, you know.
Dave.
Dave, where that look like all these scenarios are much more plausible. Like when you look at them, you're thinking, okay, this is something that if you wrote it into a script, nobody would think. They'd say, okay, like, I mean, I understand it's a screwball comedy, but you have to have something has to be grounded in reality here. Like, obviously this is just too absurd to even contemplate, and yet we're facing this being our reality. I mean, I don't know that anything crazier has happened on a national scale in my lifetime.
Yeah. No, definitely not. And not just your lifetime, but well beyond your lifetime.
Well, I don't know if anyone's still with us at this point.
Hopefully you all run far and fast.
Yeah, if you are,
save yourselves.
I'm sorry that this isn't better. I'm sorry that you essentially just are getting a real-time look into two guys losing their fucking minds. But that's what this is, at this point, and I don't know what else it can be. Again, I just think, the only thing I can think of is we have to find a way to move forward and oppose this administration, and like try to curtail the worst excesses of a Trump administration. I mean, we know it's going to be bad. The question is, will it be catastrophic and unrecoverable? And I think that's the thing that we have to try to, everyone, has tried to task themselves with being responsible for a little part of limiting that damage within acceptable limits, acceptable range. I don't know what an acceptable range of damage is, but that's our job at this point. I think that's something we have to take very seriously.
But hear me out, Kyle, because I don't want to. What do you say to that?
You don't want to in this moment, or you don't want to ever?
I just don't want to ever do anything ever again. I get under the covers. I stay there till I die.
That is a very appealing plan right now. I can't really talk you out of that. I have no good arguments in opposition to that plan, so I guess it's been nice knowing you, sir.
Yeah, it was a good run while it lasted, buddy. And I mean, civilization. It was a pretty good run while it lasted.
Humanity, RIP. Yeah, it was. Hey, we made a good few, 12,000 years or so of it, and civilization, and yeah, I mean, I think that I think we can be proud of that.
Yes, and it ends not with a bang, but with a lot of bangs. So many bangs, huge bangs.
Well, all right. I guess at this point, I mean, again, there is very little else to say. I think that in the interest of not making anybody suffer through any more of this incredibly, unbelievably depressing podcast at night or live stream at night, maybe we can mercifully put this to bed, and on the off chance that some absolute miracle happens and Hillary comes back and wins, we'll go back on the air and we will you'll just hear nothing but like high pitched screaming and
Yeah, and that'll be coming from my penis.
But yeah, so rejoin us for the miracle celebration if it's needed. But again, at this point, I think it looks like we can probably call the race for Donald Trump.
Yeah, das vidania, comrades.
From the pod couple, and again start preparing for the day after, which is it's tough sledding ahead for all of us. But again, it's if you're a patriot and you care about the country and you want to you want it to survive, then you need to step up. Starting tomorrow. So as hard as that is to swallow at the moment, I think the pod couple is going to be signing off, and we'll be back. We'll do another podcast, maybe.
We'll see.
We'll see if we can bring ourselves to do it, but I'm sure we will.
This studio might just be a big wall, by this time next week. So we need to figure something out.
But yeah, we'll find somewhere to podcast, and hopefully we will talk to you then. Like I said, until then, take care. Have a well, you're going to have a terrible night, I'm sure. But, but
drink a lot.
Yeah, maybe try to have as least terrible night as you can. Maybe by imbibing large amounts of alcohol. And we'll talk to you later. Hopefully in like an hour when there's some kind of crazy miracle, but probably much later than that. Good night.